let them be on their own.
Okay.
But
I am heroin. I
Right
destroy
up front.
homes, tear families apart, take your children, and that's just the start. More costly than diamonds, more costly than gold. The sorrow I bring is a sight to behold. And if you need me, I'm so easily found. I live all around you and hang around town. I live with the rich. I live with the poor. I live down the street, and I might be next door. My power is awesome. Test me, you'll see. Just try me once, and I'm sorry. My power is awesome. Just test me, you'll see. But if you do, you may never break free. Just try me once, and I might let you go. But try me twice, and I'll own your soul. When I possess you, you'll steal, and you'll lie. You'll do what you have to just to get high. The crimes you'll commit for my narcotic name to you is worth the power of me in your veins. You'll lie to your mother. You'll steal from your dad. When you see their tears, you should feel sad. But you'll forget your morals and how you were raised. I'll take over your conscience and shorten your days. I take kids from parents and parents from kids. I turn people from God and separate from friends. I'll take everything from you, from your looks to your pride. I'll be with you always, right by your side. You'll give up everything, your family, your home, your friends, your money will be mine and mine alone. I'll take until you've nothing more to give, and when I'm finished with you, you'll be lucky to live. If you try me, be warned, this is no game. If given the chance, I'll drive you insane. I'll ravish your body, I'll control your mind, I'll own you completely, your soul will be mine. The nightmares I'll give you while lying in bed, voices you'll hear from inside your head, the sweats, the shakes, the visions you'll see. I just want you to know these are all part of the poison of me. I'll strip you of your faith and be your only friend. You'll lose all hope and I'll be all you think of. You'll regret that you tried me, they always do, but you came to me, not I to you. You knew this would happen many times. You were told that you challenged my true power and chose to be bold. You could have said no and just walked away. If you could live that day over, now what would you say? I'll be your master, you'll be my slave. I'll even go with you when you go to your grave. Now that you've met me, what will you do? Will you try me or not? It's all up to you. I will bring you more misery than words can tell. If you take my hand, I'll drag you to hell. My name is Bailey Bryan Eshman. I am 17 years old and a senior. This poem could have quite easily been about me, and though it's not, and though drugs and I don't associate, I know countless my age that are dependent upon whatever substance they unfortunately stumbled upon on a day of weakness. Our community needs to act now. Our future depends on it. Kids are the future of not only our community, but of our nation as a whole. What future will there be if our respective leaders are running around having fun and shooting up? Is this really the conclusion that we want? We need to act now. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey, for that very emotional call to action. Good morning and welcome everyone for joining our second news conference on the Pushback Against Drug Abuse campaign. I'm Nancy Cedar and I'm a board member of the AOD Partnership and I'm employed with the Wausau School District. As you may know, heroin and other opiate drugs is increasing, and this is a problem not only in Wisconsin's larger cities, but here in Wausau and central Wisconsin as well. At our last news conference, we heard from the coroner, the director of a local treatment clinic, law enforcement, and the assistant DA to provide information on the magnitude and scope of this problem in our community. Today's focus is community engagement and to talk about how together we can mobilize to address this problem. Scott Stokes of the AIDS Resource Center of Wisconsin had an article in the Wausau Daily Herald this past weekend. He said, "Today, people struggling with opiate addiction and experiencing overdoses come from diverse backgrounds. It's all too common for these growing ranks to include teens and young adults, as well as mothers and fathers. The face of the typical heroin user has changed over the past 10 years. The AOD Partnership believes heroin, opiates, and other illicit drugs are a threat to public health and safety. Funding for prevention, treatment, and enforcement is critical, and all of us are impacted. Each and every one of us plays a part in the solution, not just law enforcement. This community engagement conference will help you to know how to recognize the signs of addiction and understand its impact on our community. You will know what is suspicious drug activity and how to report it, and what you can do to join the Pushback Against Drug Movement campaign. We have a panel of very knowledgeable people here to present information to you. With us today, we have Sue Nowak, who has worked in the prevention and treatment field for many years. We have Captain Ben Bliven, who's also an AOD Partnership Board member and past president. And we have Wausau City Council Chairperson Lisa Rasmussen. We will have time at the end for questions, and so now I will turn it over to Sue Nowak.
You know, the word addiction, it calls up many different images, and it has a lot of strong emotions with it. Most people that I have met in my life know or love somebody with an addiction. Addiction is a family disease. It goes by a lot of different names. If you want to define addiction, we look at physical addiction and psychological addiction, and for many, many years, we looked at the dangerousness of a drug by the physical withdrawal symptoms of this drug. Alcohol being the one drug that is the most dangerous to withdraw from. The reality is a lot of the dangerous drugs, such as heroin, such as the cocaine and meth, they don't have very dangerous withdrawal symptoms. There's a lot of medications that can help with the withdrawal symptoms. They're very, very uncomfortable withdrawal symptoms that can keep a lot of people into the cycle of use, but the withdrawal itself is not that dangerous. Addiction is a chronic but treatable brain disorder. People who are addicted cannot control their need for the chemical or the drug. They have a lack of control, and this lack of control is a result of the chemical changes in the brain. Those changes in turn cause behavior changes. It is this expression of addiction that is causing most of the chaos and the problems in our community. It is the behaviors of the people that are addicted that are causing many of our problems. They are the elements that are responsible for the massive health as well as the social problems in our community. Casual usage can lead to addiction as well. And I think, that brings us back to our teens. We know that the human brain takes about 25 years to reach full development. We know that teens using drugs are at most risk for the earliest onset of addiction. A lot of our teens start out with, whether it be alcohol, marijuana, then into the pills, and then go into the heroin and cocaine and meth. In our schools, we are seeing a lot of marijuana usage, and if you talk to a lot of people that are addicted to heroin, a lot of times oftentimes their usage has started with alcohol and marijuana. I think as a community, we've got to stop saying it's the passage of right of our teens to be able to drink alcohol, or that marijuana is not such a dangerous drug, because these really can be gateway drugs into the more dangerous chemicals. The number one symptom that we see of addiction is actually denial. And I hear this all the time, whether it be from adults or with the teens in our community. Most people that start out early on in the addiction believe that they can stop anytime they want. A lot of families believe, well, they're just dabbling in the drugs and they'll stop. There's a lot of families that are in denial about their family member that is addicted. Addiction is oftentimes referred to as a disease, and a lot of people get all caught up into the term disease. And all disease means is abnormal functioning in the body, abnormal functioning, abnormal behavior. And that's what we see with a lot of the addictions. It's the behaviors that are going to get people into trouble. Whatever label you want to put on it, it's a progressive syndrome, and it oftentimes is fatal. Can cause a lot of overdoses, organic complications as far as heart problems. It can cause kidney problems, liver problems, so a lot of physical problems. And again, when I talk about it being a family illness as well as a community illness, because we put so much time and energy and focus on the person who is addicted. Some of the symptoms that we see with addiction is going to be the sneaking or the hiding of the usage. It is the using for the effects of the drug. And again, that can start with alcohol, rather than using it just socially and being aware of how much alcohol you're consuming, people start to use it to allow them to, be more social. That's not quite making sense, but the preoccupation with the chemical use, the increased tolerance, avoiding conversations about the chemical use. And I have to tell you, there's a lot of guilt. What we see on the outside with an addicted person is not how they're always feeling on the inside. I have never met an addicted person who is happy being addicted. They may be happy to get the drug or the chemical, but they're not happy that they have no control. Eventually what happens is their need for the drug, how they're going to get it, where they're going to get it, how they're going to pay for it, consumes their life. And that actually becomes like a job for them. For parents watching their children, it's the changing friends, the change in appearance, maybe the weight loss, the lack of sleep, or in some cases sleeping too much, depending on which drug it is. The narrowing range of interest. You see, even with adults, they're no longer doing activities and things that they used to enjoy doing. Neglect of nutrition, and eventually leads to the physical deterioration. The distortion in thinking. As a community, we need to stop judging people that have an addiction. We need to understand that it is a brain disorder. It is chemical changes in the brain. We need to be able to support these people, because if we're continuing to judge them and condemn them, people are going to have a hard time admitting that they have an addiction and a hard time seeking treatment. If you know of somebody who has an addiction, what you need to do along with supporting them is you need to not find fault with them, but you need to support them in a way that it makes them comfortable and accepting them and assisting them with getting into treatment. There's a lot of treatment facilities in our community, a lot of wonderful counselors in this community. Just call some of the agencies here and talk to a counselor. If it's a family member, then as a family, go in, talk to a counselor, and get assistance in getting into recovery. One of the last things that I tell parents all the time, know where your children are going, know where they're hanging out, who they're hanging out with. Consistently give them the same message. We will not accept you drinking alcohol as a teenager and using other drugs. The last thing that I always leave parents with, and I truly believe that parents and adults in this community need to model behavior. We are the anti-drug in essence. We need to support our young. We need to mentor our teens. And I tell parents every time your children go out, use the look, listen, and smell technique. When your child comes home at night, look at them, look at their eyes. Have a conversation with them. Are their eyes bloodshot? Are the pupils pinpoint, or are they very, very large? Are the eyes red? Listen to their speech. Have a brief conversation with them. The next thing is look at how they're walking. Are they shuffling? Are they steady? And the last thing is hug your child. This will allow you to do the sniff test, and it will allow you to smell if they've been out smoking, drinking. Not all drugs are going to have an odor to it, but at least you're getting close to them and being able to smell if there is an odor on their body. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. I'm going to talk about signs of suspicious drug activity in the neighborhoods. I was told I have 5 minutes. I could really talk pretty briefly about that, because I think everybody really is an expert in identifying suspicious activity. If it looks out of place, if it looks suspicious to you, it probably is. In which case, we'd like you to call law enforcement so that we can respond and investigate that suspicious activity. So I think it's everybody in the community is able to identify suspicious activity, and then we just ask you to take that next step and call law enforcement so we can investigate that suspicious activity. So first I'll talk about signs of drug activity in your neighborhood. The most clear-cut one is probably a large amount of traffic to and from a residence with short duration of stop, somebody running into the house for a couple minutes and coming back out, or even somebody from inside the house going out to the cars when they arrive. And maybe you'll see a transaction, a hand-to-hand exchange in the driveway or in the yard, something like that. That's one of the most obvious signs of drug activity in the neighborhood. It doesn't necessarily have to be at strange hours. Oftentimes you hear people say that that is the case, and it could be, but it very well could be that drug dealers are working, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. or something like that. Usually it's whenever they have the drugs available to them, so it's not necessarily at strange hours of the day. If you find drug paraphernalia in the neighborhood, that's a pretty good indication that there's some type of drug activity. But some of the drug paraphernalia you might find would be discarded joints, just the end of a rolled up cigarette is what it would look like, used syringes, marijuana pipes perhaps, or small antenna, small antenna-like copper or metal type pipes. That's what I was looking for. And then sandwich baggies is often used to store and used for drug dealing. So if you see a sandwich baggie with a corner missing, or actually just a corner of a baggie that's laying on the sidewalk or in a yard, that's something that drug dealers use to package drugs. You might smell marijuana. You might smell some other type of drug being smoked. So if you're out on your porch or in your yard and you smell that odor coming from the neighbor's house, or as you're walking on the sidewalk, you smell that odor, that's a very good indication. And drug dealers often use their blinds to conceal people seeing inside of their home. So if their blinds are never open, you can't see inside the house ever. It looks like it's always shut. Or exterior video cameras. Those types of things aren't very common. So if you see that, that could be an indicator that there's some type of drug use going on there. Drug transactions don't always take place in the neighborhoods at people's homes. Often they're out in public, in parking lots, in parks, maybe even on the side of a roadway. So some things you might see are two cars meeting side by side in a parking lot with an exchange between the windows, or somebody, either the dealer or the buyer, jumping out of their car and climbing into the dealer's car for a very short duration, and then they get out and go their separate ways. Sometimes we even see a drug transaction where one person will get into the car, they'll go for a short drive and then return and then go their separate ways. So it doesn't appear to be a drug transaction, but that is common as well. Those contacts are generally very short, usually less than 5 minutes. If you're seeing that, it's a good indication that it may be a drug deal. Look for that hand-to-hand exchange, and also look for people looking around conspicuously to see if anybody's there watching them, to look for police. So if you're seeing one of these things and people are kind of looking around, see who's there, who might be watching them, and be able to identify them, that's a very good indicator as well. So what do you do when you see this type of drug activity? We always ask you to call law enforcement so that we can go and investigate what is going on. We don't want you to necessarily approach. If you see it going on in a park, we don't want you necessarily to approach those people because you don't know necessarily what's going on exactly and if they may or may not be dangerous. So we ask you to just get a license plate number, get a description of the cars, descriptions of the people, and call law enforcement. There's a number of different ways in which you can report that activity. You can certainly call dispatch center 261-1200, and that will get you to a dispatcher 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they can dispatch law enforcement anywhere in Marathon County. We have Crime Stoppers, where you can make a call anonymously. You can actually send a text anonymously through Crime Stoppers, and of course you can go to their website and make a report that way as well. Then we have Citizens Against Drug Dealers, which is there's a phone number. It's 261-7890. You can also go to the Wausau Police Department website and report drug activity through Citizens Against Drug Dealers, a form there on the website. So there's a lot of different ways in which to make those reports, and we just ask you, when you see that, it's important for us to get that information. So what happens when people report? I sometimes hear that citizens are frustrated when they call and make a report and there's no activity at the house, a police officer doesn't respond, and those types of things. So I just want to let you know that we definitely take those calls seriously. I see a number of law enforcement agencies represented here today. I assure you that they take those reports seriously. We do always respond. We will contact the reporting person if they ask us to make that contact. Some people want to report that anonymously, which is fine. but sometimes the investigations are already underway with that house. So we may have undercover drug investigators that are working that area already, in which case a uniform presence tends to undermine that. Sometimes a uniform presence will undermine that drug investigation, so we steer clear of that area for that reason. And drug investigations aren't always very quick. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks or even months in order to make a case where we can get enough probable cause for a search warrant so that we can go into the house and seize any drugs that are there. But the more information we have, the better off and the quicker the case is going to be. So we just ask you to continue to call when you're seeing suspicious activity, to call law enforcement so that we can respond and investigate. So in short, I just ask that if you recognize something that you think is suspicious, call law enforcement so that we can respond. If you don't get the response you're looking for, you can certainly talk to a supervisor and maybe ask why the response isn't what you expected. But just know that we definitely take those things seriously, and we rely on the public and the citizens to help us do our job and inform us of what is suspicious and where you think drug activity is going on. And without your assistance, we would be much less efficient at our job. So we thank everybody for their reports and their contact with law enforcement. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Rasmussen. I'm the president of the Wausau City Council. Now is the time to push back. I'm inspired by this effort underway in our community. How we respond to this threat in our community will define us. I ask myself, are we a community that will allow drugs to increasingly impact our quality of life, the quality of our workforce, the safety of our neighborhoods, and the future of our kids? Or will we stand up and fight back? The answer is that we will fight back. There's too much at stake not to. We cannot turn a blind eye. It is vital that citizens, business, and government work together to address this issue. No matter what municipality you call home, it's already in your neighborhoods, in your towns, and it may be in your homes and in your workplaces. Everyone is impacted by drug abuse. As much as local police work every day to cut off the supply end of the problem through taking drugs and drug dealers off of our streets, sadly, there are supply sources in central Wisconsin because there is a demand for what is being sold. As long as there are people willing to risk everything to buy and use drugs, there will be deals to make. This is where treatment programs, education, prevention, and intervention are key. As the parent of a young child, I'm terrified of what I see happening. Drugs are easier to come by at a younger age than ever before. There is no time to wait. This community must act now to get control of this problem, and it will take an effort from all of us. Local government, law enforcement, schools, businesses, and neighbors. We must push back against drug abuse, against the substances that will take our friends, our kids, and our relatives down a tragic path if we let it. Fact is, every addict is someone's child. And there's likely a time that someone can recall when that person was not addicted. And sadly, those are often the times people remember as being better times, the time before drugs came into the picture. Drug abuse contributes to lost time, rising healthcare costs, and inefficiency in the workplace. It contributes to absenteeism, criminal activity, domestic issues, and financial ruin. A drug-involved employee cannot properly function, just as a drug-involved parent cannot properly parent. But most certainly, a young child learns a lot from mom and dad. We cannot raise a generation of children where drug use is viewed as normal or acceptable, or as something that happens to other people. Local governments have a role to play as well. We are fast approaching budget time for 2014. It is important that state and local governments ensure that law enforcement has the resources needed to enforce drug laws, as well as adequate resources for our community partner organizations to effectively attack attack drug abuse from prevention and treatment angles. When a community is empowered through efforts like Pushback to stand up and take back its neighborhoods, its schools, and its public spaces, and protect itself from the substances that destroy lives, we, as local officials, must also be prepared and equipped to equip our staff to offer an effective and timely response when those reports start coming in. Which brings us to what each of us can do. Employers, engage employees to join this effort by getting the word out in newsletters. Encourage prevention, recovery, and treatment efforts as part of wellness programs. Encourage employees to volunteer for community programs that support this movement. Or consider a corporate donation to programs that create the impact that is needed. A drug-free, healthy, quality workforce and job applicant pool impacts the bottom line in local business in a very positive way. Residents, report activity if you see it happening. Don't assume someone else will. Be safe, but be alert. Know who belongs in your neighborhood and who doesn't. Don't be afraid. For residents who do not live in areas directly impacted by drugs and drug activity, consider donating to or volunteering for programs in the community that support prevention and enforcement efforts. This community is known for its caring and generosity. Area communities have many of the problems now that 20 years ago were considered big city problems. Drugs, crime, blight, homelessness. They're all shockingly interrelated. And they're real to us now. Right now, I can walk 5 blocks in either direction, and I can show you examples of all of these things. But we are not a population that ignores our problems. We take on the fights that matter. And this fight is worth taking on. The results of this collective effort will protect our way of life. We all must play a part. Thank you for taking part of your morning to come down and listen to us today. I'm inspired by the Pushback effort, and I'm proud to see the turnout here today. I believe that together, we all can make a difference and we can get a handle on this problem. Thank you. Each of our panelists has talked about ways that we can all be involved in this campaign. And so I just had a few more things I wanted to go over with you, and you all should be sure to pick up one of these nice red bags and some of our other resources as you go today. One way that you can be involved, you might want to join one of our AOD Partnership Council's short-term action teams, or STATs. These groups mobilize around areas and projects of interest and need. The AOD Partnership meets monthly and has an educational component at each meeting. You can sign up to be on the mailing list, and you can receive regular updates. As you've heard, you can certainly become involved at your neighborhood level. You can help with distribution of information. We have window clings that you can place on your car or your window at home. As you've heard, you need to be vigilant and report suspicious activity. You may want to encourage treatment for families, neighbors, and friends. As a school person, educators and students can certainly work together to increase awareness. And we have lots of social media out there. You can like us on Facebook to help increase awareness, or just to put posts out there and participate in discussions. You can follow us on Twitter or join our Twitter team and help us generate messages to engage the community. You can arrange a presentation to your club or civic organization. And most importantly, you can make a contribution or encourage others to help fund Pushback awareness activities. So in closing, this is the time to move from talking about the problem to action. Each and every one of us is a piece in this puzzle to a healthier, safer community. The problem impacts each and every one of us, and we can do something about this. In the words of Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the presenters, the media, all of you concerned citizens, Kinsey Green Marketing Group, and the Judd S. Alexander Foundation for bringing the Pushback Against Drugs campaign to life. At this time, I would like to open the floor to questions. And I also want to make it known that everybody will be sticking around afterwards if you would rather have a one-on-one discussion with somebody here today. So with that, does anybody have any questions? Yes. Oh, the link to the website is www.pushbackagainstdrugs.com. No? Pushbackdrugs.com. www.pushbackdrugs.com.